Okay, Salam Alaikum. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us here tonight. This is something of a new event, a new initiative from City Circle. It's become tradition over the last few years for us to have a pre-Ramadan event, the Friday before the start of Ramadan. Unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 pandemic this year, it means that we can't have our usual get-together in central London. But hopefully, in a small way, we can turn that to our advantage. Quite often, people ask us about whether we're going to be live casting and live streaming our events over the internet. Usually, that's not possible. But this year, we're doing this virtually via Zoom. And I was really pleased to see when people were signing up. Firstly, the number of people. Unfortunately, we've been a victim of our own success, which has meant that although we've got 100 places tonight, we've got more people who were waiting and unfortunately didn't manage to register. But it does mean that we've got probably a more diverse group of people and a more diverse audience than we've ever had before. I was pleased to see that we've got people from well beyond London. We've got people from Cardiff, Sheffield, Manchester and Leeds in the UK. And internationally, I saw that we've got people registering from Canada, Pakistan, the United Arab Emirates, the US, France, Belgium and South Africa. So wherever you are in the world, whether it's good morning, good afternoon, good evening, thank you very much for joining us. Jummah Mubarak, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Joining us here, we are of course here tonight to talk about preparing for Ramadan under a lockdown. Now, usually preparing for Ramadan is something of a physical and spiritual and mental journey and marathon for all of us. But of course, this year, there's a very different dynamic. There's a very different atmosphere in society. People's work lives and normality have been upended. But of course, the Islamic calendar carries on. Ramadan is fast approaching. And so we're here to consider with our panelists tonight, how we prepare for Ramadan this year under the new reality that we find ourselves in. So I'd like to introduce our two guest speakers tonight. Shaykh Haytham Tamim is well known to many of you. He's been speaking here at City Circle for 20 years, sort of going back to the very earliest days of City Circle. He's the founder of the Rouge Foundation. And Dr. Hina Shahid is a GP practicing in London and the chair of the Muslim Doctors Association. Normally, I'd say at this point, please give them a very warm welcome. That's a bit difficult virtually, but I'm sure you're applauding. I'm sure you're giving your salams from wherever you are. Okay, so just to explain the format for this evening, we've got just over an hour. So we're going to hear from the Sheikh first of all, who's going to address us for around about 20 minutes or so. And then I'm going to hand over to Hina, who's going to talk to us about preparing physically and mentally, particularly given that a lot of people's mental health and people's normality has been changed very much by circumstance this year, and also the importance of what we can and can't do, so complying with public health advice this Ramadan. And then I want to allow as much time as possible. That should give us hopefully around about half an hour at the end for questions and answers. So if you have got questions, there is a question and answer feature in Zoom. You just need to click Q&A down at the bottom of your screen. If you hover over it, it will appear. You can type your questions in there at any point, and when we come to Q&A, I'll put those to our speakers. I should also mention we're trying to live stream this tonight via Facebook. I'm not quite sure if that's actually working, but if it is, if there are friends or you know people who were trying to register and weren't able to, they should be able to go to our Facebook page. So if you just go to facebook.com/the City Circle, you should be able to connect with us and watch it there live. I'm just being told it's not working, unfortunately. So sorry about that. We'll see if we can get connected during this evening. But apologies if not. Do remember as well, you can join in the discussion tonight. You can tell your friends about what's going on, some of the key points of what we're discussing. On Facebook, on Twitter and on Instagram, we're at the City Circle. And if you're tweeting, just remember to use the hashtag #CCTalks. Okay, so just to introduce our first speaker tonight, Shaykh Haytham Tamim is the founder and the main teacher at the Rouge Foundation, where he's been providing leading vision in Islamic learning in the UK, which has influenced how Islamic knowledge is disseminated. His experience is very extensive. It goes back sort of 30 years, and he's covered all of the main Islamic schools of jurisprudence. And he holds some of the highest qualifications and certifications in fiqh, Quran, and hadith. He gave his first sermon to a large audience at the age of just 17, and then went on to serve as a senior lecturer in Islamic transactions and comparative jurisprudence at the Islamic University of Beirut. He's continued to teach. He travels across the UK, Europe, and further afield. And in 2015, he won the British Imams and Scholars Contributions and Achievements Award for the outstanding contribution for education and teaching. So, Shaykh Haytham Tamim, over to you.
Thank you, Ben. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Every year, Ramadan comes with a different flavor. And the beauty of Ramadan, regardless of the time, always it comes with something new. Although you are fasting in Ramadan, but you can still taste the sweetness of Ramadan. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala favored this ummah with Ramadan. Ramadan has never been given to any ummah before, any nation before. It's a special gift to this ummah. Although Siyam has been given to all nations before, as Allah stated in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 183, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. O you who believe, Siyam has been prescribed for you, as it was prescribed for those who were before you, that you may practice taqwa. So it's clearly stating that Siyam has been prescribed for those who were before us. So it's not a unique thing for our ummah. We have something in common with all the previous nations, which is Siyam. But the very special thing which Allah has given to this ummah is Ramadan. This is why Allah Azza wa Jal says, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. The month of Ramadan where the Quran has been revealed. So yes, the Quran has never been revealed before, but it was revealed in Ramadan. And we know that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as Aisha narrated in Sahih Bukhari and others, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he reached his 40s, he started shunning his community and the idol worshippers, and he started going to the cave of Hira, Ghar Hira. And those who visited Mecca and went to Ghar Hira, it's a very beautiful journey, but it is tough, very tough journey. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to lift this calamity and this pandemic and enable people to go back to Mecca and do tawaf and do Umrah and do Hajj, inshallah ta'ala, and enjoy the blessings of the Haram. So he used to go, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to the cave of Hira when he was in his 40s. And Aisha narrated, radiallahu ta'ala anha, فَكَانَ يَتَحَنَّسُ اللَّيَالِيَ ذَوَاتِ الْعَدَدِ. So he used to worship Allah for so many nights until حَتَّى جَاءَهُ الْحَقِّ. The truth came to him, until Jibreel came to him. And he said, اقرأ. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and this is the beauty of reflecting on these verses and these events, that before Ramadan, it was more likely like these days in Sha'ban. He started going to the cave of Hira for so many nights and so on and so forth. It wasn't the first night he received Jibreel. Al-layali, which is plural, Aisha saying here, radiyallahu ta'ala anha. So he used to go for so many nights until Jibreel came to him. So Jibreel came to him in Ramadan. So sort of like these days, and he was in seclusion, alayhi salatu wassalam. And we have been forced to go into seclusion. So seclusion is of two types. The seclusion which you choose, and the seclusion which being forced on you. So we are on the second type, not the first type, because we didn't choose to seclude ourselves. It's been forced on all of us to do that. But the Prophet ﷺ, in his seclusion, he was seeking the truth. searching for the truth with sincerity, with deep conviction, and he's longing to find the truth, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And with that in place, Allah Azza wa Jal has sent the truth to him because of his sincerity. And look at the journey. I always give this very example. Look at the journey. If you've never been to the cave of Hira, you won't get what I'm saying properly. It's a very steep, very long journey. It's around an hour or so to go there. Imagine, he used to go, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a few trips every few days to go back and bring food and drinks and stuff, and then go to his cave, alayhi salatu wassalam. And when you go and reach the cave, it's a very small space, it's not that big, but the view from there is breathtaking. You can see Mecca from there. Of course, now with the building stuff, etc., it's very difficult. But before, you can easily see Mecca from very far distance, around 2 kilometers, something like that, 1.5 miles or the like of it. So the Prophet ﷺ was secluding himself before Ramadan and in Ramadan. Then the truth came to him. So my reflection here, we are now secluding ourselves, and many of us are complaining, and many of us are fed up with the children, with this, with that, and the neighbors and the noises and these kind of things, and ongoing demands, and so it's heavy. So we changed our habits, we changed our routine. This is the new thing. Ramadan came with a new thing now. The habits are very new to us. We are not familiar with secluding ourselves in our houses for that long. Couple of days, few hours, fine, but it's been more than that. And we have been forced as well to control our actions. So we can't go out, we can't do this, we can't visit, we can't receive visitors, and so on. So Ramadan is all about communication and connection. Communication with the family, communication with community, going to Taraweeh, doing open iftars. We lost all of this. But Allah Azza wa Jal wants us to go inside. So let's think about it more as a positive thing rather than a negative thing. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was going inside, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he found the truth. So Ramadan here is bringing a new meaning to us. So we can take it and improve it and make it better, i.e. our life and the opportunity which we have been given, or we can keep moaning and nagging and complaining and frustrating and having more anxiety, and you know where it ends. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this very month a special month for everyone to contemplate. And alhamdulillah, we have been prepared before Ramadan, that we've been preparing, inshallah, hopefully all of us, for Ramadan, because we have more time now, we have more focus, hopefully now. Although we have painful events around us, we lost some friends, we lost some family members, we lost some dear people to us, but nevertheless, life will continue. So how can we make this Ramadan a better experience than the previous Ramadans? It all goes to our intention, number one. Number two, it goes to our heart. So we have the intention that, Ya Rabbi, we want to make this Ramadan a good experience. Number two, we should work on our hearts. This is where mother of receptions, if you want, like the motherboard you have in your computer. This is the mother of receptions, where you receive all the light from Allah Azza wa Jal, the knowledge from Allah Azza wa Jal, the mercy, the forgiveness. It all resides in the heart. So we need to declutter our hearts. We need to spring clean our hearts and polish our hearts in order to make it better to receive the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it's the month of mercy. It's the month of forgiveness. It's the month of elevation. It's the month of connection and communication. So the Prophet ﷺ, he used to prepare for Ramadan before Ramadan. Actually, he used to prepare for Ramadan in Rajab. There's a supplication in the Sunnah. Prophet ﷺ, when Rajab starts, he used to say, Allahumma barik lana fi Rajab wa Sha'ban wa ballighna Ramadan. So Allah bless Rajab for us and Sha'ban and bring us to Ramadan. So it's an indication that the Prophet ﷺ, he was encouraging the Ummah to prepare for Ramadan. It's a very special month. It's a very special occasion. And because he knows, alayhi salatu wassalam, what's in Ramadan more than anyone else. He's being given, alayhi salatu wassalam, the secrets to the unseen, which Allah allowed him to see more than anyone else, alayhi salatu wassalam. So he was encouraging the believers to receive Ramadan with open hearts. It's the month where the gates of Jannah will be open, all the gates, and the gates of hell will be locked. And there is a caller who will say, Ya da'i al-khayri aqbil, O you who's seeking goodness, come forward. Wa ya da'i al-sharri aqsir, and O you who's seeking evil, go away. So as we can see, it's all about preparing ourselves to be better. Of course, all of us, we have shortcomings, we have bad habits, we have mistakes, we have issues. Yes, Ramadan comes and brings the opportunity to fix it and make it better, inshallah ta'ala. So number one, we need to fix our relationship with Allah, which is the most important thing. And once the Prophet ﷺ was with Mu'adh radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, I was riding with the Prophet ﷺ on his donkey. And he said, Ya Mu'adh, O Mu'adh, do you know what is Allah's rights over his servants? And what's the servants' rights over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Mu'adh said, Allahu wa rasuluhu a'lam. Allah and his messenger knows best. I don't know. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said to Mu'adh, Allah's rights over his servants is to worship him, to be worshipped with no partners. And their right on Allah Azza wa Jal, if they have done so, i.e. they have worshipped him with no partners, he will forgive them and admit them to Jannah. And Mu'adh said to the Prophet ﷺ, shall I go and tell everyone? The Prophet ﷺ said, no, don't tell everyone. They will rely on this. So he didn't tell them until later. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying here that the first thing we need to fix is our connection with Allah Azza wa Jal. His right over every single one of us is to improve our ibadah, our connection, our worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينَ comes into place. You alone we worship, and from you alone we seek help. Number two is fixing our relationship with ourselves. In another occasion, the Prophet ﷺ visited Abdullah bin Amr ibn al-As. He's a young companion, full of energy, full of love to Allah and his messenger, and he wants to do a lot. So he used to fast every day, and he used to do qiyam every night. And he was married. So the Prophet ﷺ visited him, and his wife was telling the Prophet ﷺ that Abdullah, he is mashallah doing this and doing that. And then the Prophet ﷺ was not impressed. And he asked Abdullah bin Amr, he said, is it true that you are doing this? He said, yes, O Messenger of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said, don't do that. And to his surprise, Abdullah bin Amr, if you are in his position, you will probably expect that the Prophet ﷺ will say, carry on, that's good, because you are doing ibadah, you are doing siyam, you are doing qiyam, that's brilliant, carry on. To his surprise, the Prophet ﷺ didn't say this to him. He said, don't do that. What? Yes, don't do that. And then he has given the reason, alayhi salatu wassalam, and this is his prophetic manner. He won't tell you don't without telling the reason, because he wants you to understand. To do it properly, you need to understand. And he said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, inna li nafsika alayka haqqa. Your self has right upon you. Wa inna li zawjika alayka haqqa. Your wife has right upon you. وَإِنَّ لِزَوْرِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا. Your guests has right upon you. فَأَعْطِ كُلَّ ذِي حَقٍّ حَقًّا. Give everyone his right. So he's sallallahu alaihi wasallam talking about creating a balance. So he wasn't impressed with Abdullah bin Amr because he has broken the balance. So we are not angels to just be in the mode of worship all the time. We are humans at the same time. So we have worship and we have daily activities. So we need to get the balance right. So this is why he was angry, alayhi salatu wasalam, and he said, don't do that. So fixing the relationship with ourselves. Number 3 is fixing the relationship with our fellow humans. And it comes priority number 1, your parents. Yes, because Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith, حَقُّ الْمُسْلِمِ عَلَى الْمُسْلِمِ سِتْ. The Muslim has right upon the Muslim, 6 things are his rights. And he mentioned ﷺ these 6 things, like when you meet him, greet him, and so on. So the concept here that the Muslim, he has right over his fellow Muslim, and humans as well, fellow humans has rights upon us as well. So how to fix this? The Prophet ﷺ defined how to fix it. So we need to be people of mercy, people of love, people of care, people of support. We need to be people of promoting goodness, collaborating, and doing things which is good and beneficial. So when we do this, we fulfill these 3 dimensions. And there's no better time than now in Ramadan to improve these 3 dimensions. And it's not just exclusive dimensions for Ramadan. No, this is how we fix our life. So if we were to get the balance right, our relationship with Allah, number 1, our relationship with ourselves, number 2, our relationship with people around us, then we can get it right. So we get the priority, parents, number 1, for instance, children, wife, spouse, or siblings, neighbors, colleagues, friends, and so on. So we need to prioritize it and see who's come first. If there's no contradiction, we can do everything together with some priorities, of course. But if there's a contradiction, what to put first? Is it your parents or your friend? Is it your spouse or your friend? And so on. So we need to get it right. And now is the right time. We need to work on ourselves. And Ramadan gives us this spiritual booster. help us to be more sensible, more caring, more into service rather than to be on the receiving end. We need to as well be more helping and supporting. And because it's now time to reflect with this very special calamity which we are receiving, we are in the midst of it. So it's time to reflect on our records, on our shortcomings, on our mistakes. And at the same time, on the other page, look at the favors of Allah Azza wa Jal, which we have. Plenty of favors Allah has given to us. The favors which we take for granted, we lost it now. So going shopping with no queues, and going on the tube, going traveling, going on holiday, going, you name it. And we see, wow, where are these favors now? We lost it. Okay, this is why in the hadith, Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min zawali ni'matik. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from losing your favors. Now we understand it more. He's saying, I seek refuge in you from losing your favors. وَتَحَوُّلِ عَافِيَتِكَ, and changing of the well-being. We see this as well. This dua is walking, talking now to us. وَفُجَاءَةِ نِقْمَتِكَ, and your sudden anger. وَجَمِيعِ سَخَطِكَ, I seek refuge from anything that displeases you. So we need to reflect on this before Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala. And I hope I'll open the floor later, inshallah, for your questions. But I thought this is what I wanted to share with you today, inshallah, and see how can we make this Ramadan better Ramadan, inshallah, with balance in our connection and communication, with gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his favors, and hopefully, inshallah, we can be better humans, bi-iznillah ta'ala.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much there, Sheikh. I was starting to get sort of questions coming through now, but we'll leave those until after we've heard from our next speaker. Just one update. I know that unfortunately there was a problem earlier on with live streaming on Facebook. Inshallah, that is working now. You need to go to our Facebook page. So if you just go to facebook.com/thecitycircle, so the City Circle is just written as one word there. I know there's a few people already watching, but if you know other people who want to watch, they can tell them that they can join there. Okay, so our next speaker tonight, who I'd like to introduce, is Dr. Hina Shahid. As I said, she's the chair of the Muslim Doctors Association, and she's a GP working at an inner-city practice here in London. She qualified as a doctor with UCL and got the first prize in psychology, sociology, and epidemiology. And she's also done a separate BSc in pharmacology and an MSc in public health from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. She's now a university tutor at Imperial College Medical School for personal and professional development. And she's also a GP appraiser, which I take it to mean that she keeps an eye on other GPs and checks up that they're doing their jobs properly. She's worked extensively on mental health issues. Some of you may recognise her from the initiative that she and others at MDA launched earlier this year, which is the Wellbeing Wednesdays. And she's also volunteered with a number of community and other charities, both in the UK and internationally, assisting migrants and refugee health projects. She's currently studying a diploma in Islamic sciences and is particularly interested in integrating Islamic spirituality with mindfulness and compassion-based approaches to mental health and well-being. So, Hina, over to you.
Great. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Ben, for inviting me to speak at this year's Ramadan, pre-Ramadan event. So Ramadan is going to be very different for all of us this year. It is a month where we disconnect and reconnect with ourselves, the creation, the creator, Sheikh already has alluded to. It's a time when we reflect, reset, and renew our intentions to become the best version of ourselves, and to develop virtuous conduct, to help the vulnerable and the needy, and to realign ourselves with the true purpose of our existence by serving Allah. Ramadan is also a highlight in the social calendar for Muslims, a time for family and community get-togethers, charity drives, lots of celebration. And this year will be very different, no doubt, but newness brings with it opportunities, those that we may not have had before, and if we had another normal Ramadan. And perhaps there is divine wisdom in this and lessons to be learned. It's really important that all the actions that we take during Ramadan are in keeping with key public health advice, which is to save lives. So that means staying at home and only going out if absolutely necessary, social distancing, which means keeping a distance of 2 meters between yourself and anyone else, socially isolating if you're showing symptoms or if you're in a high risk group, washing your hands frequently with soap and water, and turning to the right sources of information. And the fact that we're in a pandemic has actually spurred lots of people to start taking their health seriously and to reflect on their lifestyle and health choices, because our health is our biggest weapon against the virus. One of the issues that we're seeing is the impact of the virus on people's mental and emotional health. And there's almost a parallel mental health pandemic of stress, anxiety, and depression that we're seeing. And in a report published a couple of weeks ago in the US, about half of the American population is experiencing mental health issues. And for people with underlying mental health problems, it is actually worsening their mental state. And some of the reasons that have been proposed for this include the lockdown and lengthy isolation, social distancing, the fear that people have of getting sick or having loved ones become ill, the economic downturn and fear of unemployment or having already lost a job, and the uncertainty of how long this unusual and isolated lifestyle will continue. So what does Islam say about health? So our body has been given to us as an amana, as a trust from Allah, and so we have a responsibility to look after this gift that we've received. And we already heard Sheikh mention that hadith about, our body having a right over us. So let's take a practical example. If you're ill, whether that's physically or psychologically, then you may struggle to fast. So good health is a basic prerequisite to fasting. If you have limited mobility or physical stamina, you may not be able to do the night prayers or the sitting and standing postures in your normal prayers. If your mind is consumed by worries or anxiety, you won't be able to focus in your acts of worship. So your health is correlated with the quality of your worship or ibadah. And there's a natural synergy between the imperative to look after our health during Ramadan as an act of worship and obedience to Allah, and the need to look after our health to fight effectively against coronavirus. But when we talk about health, we need to think about it as a holistic concept with multiple dimensions. So we've got our physical health, our mental health, emotional, social, and spiritual health. So what I call the 5 pillars of health. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes just talking about how we can build these 5 pillars of health during Ramadan in lockdown, so that we can live healthy, meaningful, and fulfilling lives as the best versions of ourselves. So let's begin to break these pillars down. The first thing I want to say is that all these pillars are interdependent. So in order to be healthy and balanced, you need to work on each of these areas. I'll talk about some of the challenges that we're seeing in each of these areas, and also the practical steps with a focus on mental and emotional health, because this seems to be the real concern at the moment, but using all the other pillars to support this. So with physical health, we know that fasting is beneficial to our physical health. There are studies that show that it can promote weight loss, better glucose control. So for those with diabetes, some evidence for reducing blood pressure and cholesterol. And there's also evidence that shows that it actually boosts our immunity and can also control binge eating and smoking cessation. But we also see some common complaints like headaches, constipation, heartburn, and unfortunately we see people gaining weight and their diabetic control worsening. And I'll come on to some of these reasons later on, but essentially, our food is our medicine. And if we were to follow the prophetic way of eating, then, and also drinking enough fluid, obviously, we wouldn't have most of these complaints. Next, if we go into mental and emotional health, so fasting has been shown to promote the release of what we call happy hormones, so endorphins, that can actually increase our alertness and optimism, and increase our sense of gratitude and compassion, and improve our overall well-being. But the challenges that we're seeing currently are around lots of people feeling very scared and fearful, feeling uncertain. There are high levels of stress. There's low motivation because of the loss of routine that many people are experiencing working from home. And like I mentioned, we're seeing an increase in mental health disorders as well. If we then look at the social dimension, so Ramadan traditionally is a time where we see a lot of community spirit, participation, connection. And this time it's going to be different because we're in isolation. So many people are experiencing loneliness, which we know in London is already a major public health problem. People are experiencing grief reactions. There are strains on relationships that are being reported. And we're also seeing this really worrying trend of an increase in domestic violence as well, that is also affecting our communities. And then finally, in the spiritual dimension, we know that fasting, one of the purposes to reset our connection with Allah and to develop taqwa, which is translated in lots of different ways. And one of the ways that, for the purpose of today, I'm just going to say God consciousness. But it's also, promotes self-regulation and introspection. As Sheikh already mentioned before, we really begin to reflect on our purpose, and it's an opportunity for us to gain blessings, knowledge, and improve our practice, our character, and virtuous conduct. But we are seeing community events, such as congregational prayers, that have been cancelled. We're seeing people struggling with their faith, feeling that they are being punished or they deserve bad things, that God doesn't love them. And I've had many people who've mentioned these things to me. So we are seeing that people are struggling, and this is leading to this sense of helplessness and hopelessness as well. So what can we do about this? So the action points that I'm going to list are actually rooted in mindfulness. And this is, like I mentioned already, very closely related to the concept of taqwa, which is God consciousness and mindfulness of Allah. So first of all, we need to begin with the basics and make sure that these are in order. And this means, making sure that we're eating the right things in Ramadan, that we do incorporate physical activity, and that we're sleeping. Now, I know that some of these can be quite challenging, especially sleep, because sleep deprivation can be an issue, but let's focus on the positives. People are not commuting to work anymore. So we're getting extra time in bed. And so, this is an opportunity for us to get more sleep. So I really want to emphasize this point of making healthy choices. And that means kind of with our diet, making sure that the food that we're eating is obviously halal and tayyib, that we try and plan our meals in advance, which is more important during the lockdown because we're not supposed to be going out, getting food delivered, shopping delivered if possible. And if we are going to go out shopping, then to make this an infrequent event, rather than popping out to get milk one day and bread the other day. It's really important to plan these things out because we want to limit our interaction with other people. Having balanced meals during suhoor and iftar, making sure that we include all the major food groups in both those meals, making sure that our food is wholesome and it's in season, using healthy cooking methods, limiting our sugar and salt intake, avoiding fried and fatty foods, and really limiting our portion sizes as well. So a lot of us tend to overfill our plates, and that's why we get some of these problems with the heartburn and constipation, because we're not eating the right stuff and we're not eating in the right amounts. And make sure that you drink plenty of fluids, so 2 to 2.5 liters of fluids per day, and try and avoid caffeine as well. Physical activity is another one, but people say we don't have any energy, so how can we do exercise? But it is really important, even if that means doing a walk, going outside for a walk, obviously maintaining social distancing. If you have a garden, and you can use that to exercise. And now there's so many online apps and videos as well that you can follow. And I myself have downloaded lots of apps that I'm using to try and make sure that I'm staying fit and active during the lockdown. Then secondly, our emotional health. It's really important for us to start by becoming aware of how we're feeling. So think about, where are you right now? What is it that's bothering you? What are you worried about? How are you responding to these things? Are you getting angry? Are you frustrated? How are they showing up in your body? What are your normal responses? Developing awareness is the first step to actually doing something about how to manage our feelings and emotions in a healthy way. So this may involve keeping a journal, doing a mindfulness meditation. Again, there are lots of guided videos and apps out there that I'm happy to recommend. But one of the things that people might find helpful is to develop a care plan. So looking at, especially if you're struggling, this might be a really helpful thing for you to do. Think about what are your triggers, and what are the healthy strategies that you can use. And maybe this is the opportunity to really get to know ourselves and working on developing that virtuous conduct that we always wanted. Then if we move on to mental health, the main message that I want to give here is it's really important to be mindful of what information we're taking in and how much information. We're currently being bombarded by information from all sources. There's a lot of fake news going around, and this is really feeding into a lot of people's anxiety. So my advice would be to look at only reputable sources. So that's the World Health Organization, Public Health England, the government guidance, and some of the community organizations that are working on producing guidance specifically for the Muslim community. But try and avoid forwarding on all these WhatsApp messages that you're receiving, because a lot of people are suffering anxiety, and they're using these messages in a way almost to feed other people's anxiety. So please try and limit the amount of information that you're consuming. And also be aware of where you can go to for help. So GPs are working as normal. We're still, our mode of working has changed. We're doing a lot more telephone and virtual consultations, but we are there. And actually most of my work as a GP now is dealing with mental health problems, because we have seen such a spike. Mental health services are also operating as normal. So in lots of areas, especially if you live in London, each borough will have something called IAPT, so improving access to psychological therapies. You can actually refer yourself directly to a counsellor or psychologist. You don't need to go to your GP. And the NHS has also produced a really good portal called Every Mind Matters, which has got lots of resources on how we can look after our mental health. So I'd really encourage you to look at those things. And then, we've got, some of us have time, so use that time wisely to learn beneficial information and knowledge, and to maybe learn new skills. So really reconnecting with the Quran during this Ramadan and the time that we've been given. There are lots of online courses as well that are running. Some people are spending this time learning new languages or doing cooking. So, there are lots and lots of opportunities. Routine is something else that people are struggling with. And I'm not going to kind of sit here and tell you how to develop your own routine. That's a very individual thing. But we know that it is helpful for you to develop some kind of routine if you can, to maintain your motivation, and to give you that sense of purpose in your day, and some structure, which we know is beneficial for your mental health. Other kind of mental health exercises that you might want to try if you're feeling really overwhelmed. So there's something called the brain dump, which is where you just get a piece of paper, write down everything that's on your mind. It doesn't have to be in any particular order, just write it all down and you feel much better. Journaling is also another technique. Meditation I've already mentioned, but and there are lots of them out there. So some of the apps such as Calm and Headspace now are giving free, especially for NHS workers, they're giving free subscriptions, so you can use them. But there are also on YouTube and some websites. If you just type in mindfulness, you'll find kind of lots of mindfulness websites, and the exercises are really good, but it does require you to be consistent, and 10 minutes a day is fine. There are also lots of breathing exercises that you can do. So my personal favorite is the 4-4-8. Again, you can look this up, but just doing some of these cycles for a few minutes can really help calm down those feelings of overwhelm that you might be experiencing. Other things are writing a gratitude journal. So in studies, writing down 3 things every day at the end of the day that you're grateful for has been shown to improve a sense of well-being and lift your mood, and also help people who are experiencing depression, the symptoms of depression. And kind of finally moving on to mindful connection. So we are social distancing, but we're so lucky to be living in an era of technology. City Circle today has held this fantastic event. It's all online. People can benefit from it from the comfort of their homes. A lot of people are reaching out to friends and family that they haven't spoken to for years. So, you know, people are really reaching out and making connections with people. The advice is clear: stay at home. So that does mean, you know, not to have iftar parties. That means keeping in your own household and not inviting extended members of the family either, or for you to go and see extended members of the family, because like I said, every time you meet somebody else, you are at risk of transmitting the infection. So it's absolutely vital that you stick to your household family members only and not interact with other people, but make use of technology. Also, if you know people who might be struggling, you know, make sure that you check in on them regularly. Just ask them, how are you doing? Do you need anything? Is there anything on your mind that you'd like to talk about? Especially for people who've lost loved ones, you know, this might be a time that they're really struggling. So do reach out to them. A lot of people are also signing up to volunteering initiatives, which is great. So this is still going ahead, and we have a lot of vulnerable people in the community who would really benefit from that. But again, I want to emphasize the need to work with registered groups, and remember, don't put yourself or other people at risk. So, you know, make sure that you are social distancing, that you're not gathering it together, that you're wearing face masks, that you're washing your hands, and not contaminating the vulnerable people that you're serving. And very finally, and I'm not going to go into this too much because Sheikh has already covered it, the fifth dimension of kind of spiritual well-being. You know, this is really a time for us to go inside, to contemplate, as Sheikh mentioned, to spring clean and polish our hearts and fix our relationship with Allah. And really think about what lessons are we learning and what are we reflecting on during this period of seclusion, this lockdown. You know, are we learning to accept and let go? Are we becoming more humble and compassionate? Are we seeking forgiveness from Allah? And also, are we being more forgiving to other people as well? Are we restraining ourselves, our words and our actions? And are we being patient, and are we grateful for all the blessings that we've been given? So, you know, the take-home message is that there are lots of growth opportunities during this difficult time. There are opportunities to look after ourselves, our health in all its dimensions. And inshallah, we come out of it as more wholesome human beings and servants of Allah that, you know, we during Ramadan, but also that we can carry forward in the rest of our lives, inshallah.
Ameen. Thank you very much. Thank you very much there, Hina. Right, okay, lots there to think about and lots there to talk about. So I want to go over to questions now. We've had a few of them come in by email. We've had a few people asking questions online. Just very briefly, one sort of housekeeping question, which I can answer quite quickly myself. A couple of people are asking about whether or not the session is being recorded. Yes, it is. This is, as I said at the start, this is all a bit experimental for us. So we'll advise sort of through social media sort of exactly when and where it's available online once sort of after the events is finished. But particularly if you know people who weren't able to register in time before we had to cut things off, then yeah, you should be able to direct it towards them so that they can watch online and hopefully benefit from this as well. Right, okay. A couple of questions in well, I'll try and take them in the order in which they've come in from. Right, somebody called Sunny G has asked, I think this is probably a question for the Sheikh. Please could you advise, are there any UK mosques that are doing or will be doing Zoom or other online broadcasts for prayers, particularly Taraweeh and Jummah? Sheikh, I think that's probably a question for you.
To be honest with you, I'm not aware of any mosque, but there might be some mosques. I've had some discussion among the some scholars that some mosques might be doing an online, but I'm not aware of a particular name. And because we have different views on whether it's allowed to do virtual congregation, like the imam is at the mosque and you are at home and he's leading the jama'ah at the mosque and you are following him. We have different views, but the majority view is no. The Maliki view has some conditions. If you can guarantee, so to say, that the connection is there. They can know and recognize the movements of the imam, and they can hear his voice. That's enough. They can follow the jama'ah, even virtual jama'ah. That's fine.
Okay, and that's, I was going to say, I think you've actually sort of half answered another question that I had coming up as well. A question from Dolly Telkulda. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. She was asking, is it possible to do Taraweeh virtually? So if you have a computer linked to the imam who's doing the Taraweeh prayers and to follow it at home. I think you've sort of answered that,
Yeah,
Sheikh.
and I know some people will be very upset about talking about this issue, because how come you are inventing a new way of the jama'ah? It's always been in the mosque, shoulder to shoulder, and the community spirit, and you don't have this online. I understand, but these are unprecedented circumstances, so we cannot deal with it with the normal regulations and rules. We need something to accommodate people, and this is temporarily. You cannot say in any circumstances you can do that. For those who are promoting or delivering this fatwa, and I'm sympathizing with this, to be honest with you, if it's delivering a purpose, which is keeping people connected with the Quran or with the Salah, better than keep them connected with TV channels and online and offline stuff in Ramadan. So it's better than having something else which is not a form of worship.
Okay, I mean, of course, it's worth pointing out that, I mean, this really applies for Sunni Muslims. I mean, Shia Muslims traditionally don't do Taraweeh prayers at the mosque. They usually do them at home. And somebody's just messaging me on the side to remind me that, of course, it's perfectly normal for women, of course, to do Taraweeh at home. This is sort of no different to normal from them. Hina, obviously, I recognise that you're a doctor rather than a medical scholar, but what would your pragmatic view on that be? I mean, if there were people who were thinking, possibly just, I mean, if they've got a lot of friends and extended family living sort of in proximity to their home, they may be thinking about trying to do Taraweeh sort of in somebody's living room or sort of out on the street. What would your advice be?
So the advice for that is very simple and clear. It's to stay at home and protect lives, and that means, you know, so if there are 4 of you that are normally at home, then the 4 of you, you know, remain at home, and you don't have another person, a member of the extended family coming. I know it's really difficult, and it's really tempting just to pop in to say hello, or just to have a quick meal. It is very tempting, but we have to remember the reason why we're doing it, and it is to make sure that we are protecting those vulnerable people that we aren't seeing from getting ill. So it's absolutely necessary. It's even more important to not give in to temptation during this time.
Okay. Another question that came in via email earlier this week, a question from Gulam Sawa. And I'll read this out. I think this is probably one for, let's have a look. Well, I'll decide who to hand it over to in just a second. People in their 70s with managed medical conditions such as hypertension, lipid disorder, who are also pre-diabetic, and are advised to maintain a robust immune system as a defense against COVID-19. Would fasting make them more vulnerable to coronavirus? And if they cannot fast, should they pay fidya instead? I think I'll give part one of that obviously to Hina, and then ask the Sheikh to respond on the second part.
Sure. So from a medical perspective, if you've got any underlying health problem, so whether that's diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, you're strongly advised to speak to your GP before Ramadan to make sure that it is okay for you to fast and that it won't cause any adverse effects. So for example, if you are insulin dependent diabetic and you need to have multiple injections, which, you know, are essential for your health, and just then you may not be in a position to fast. If you have diabetes and you take medication, say twice a day, you know, it's possible to adjust the regime of when you take your medication, so it may be possible. it does depend, and it does require an individual discussion with your own GP. In terms of immune system, now there is some evidence that fasting can boost your immune system. The evidence isn't that robust, but I'd advise to make sure that you have all your immunizations. So if you're eligible for your pneumococcal vaccination, that you've had that, and your influenza vaccination, should have already had that several months ago. So you should be immune to other kind of infections, and maintain a healthy diet and healthy lifestyle is really key to making sure that you have a well-functioning immune system.
And if somebody is, I think the term is immunocompromised, I mean, if somebody knows already that they've got their immune system isn't as good as it could be, should they be fasting?
It's a difficult one, because being immunocompromised is on a spectrum, and some people, I guess if you have a proper immunocompromised condition, you would be in the high risk category anyway, and you would be shielding. And then, I guess, yes, you are more susceptible to infection, but fasting isn't going to alter that risk, if that makes sense. So fasting is a separate issue, which depends on kind of your underlying health, your baseline health. So it would be a discussion with your GP.
Okay, I mean, obviously what nobody wants to do sort of when GPs and when the health services particularly sort of under pressure this year, is to sort of start taking risks with their health and then sort of expose themselves to additional risks and compound things which may either sort of make them vulnerable, or at the very least sort of start putting extra pressure on the health services when they're stretched. Sheikh, if I could just turn to the second part of that question for you. If people don't know exactly sort of what the risks are going to be, and possibly if their GP sort of gives them a slightly qualified answer about whether or not they should be fasting, should they, in your view, sort of consider not fasting this year and instead pay fidya and increase their zakat?
In these circumstances, the scholars' opinions always rely on the medical opinion. So whatever the specialists say, if they said he can fast, then he can fast. If they said no, he shouldn't fast, then he shouldn't fast. And accordingly, he falls under the category of فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. So if he was ill, or he was traveling, or it's difficult for him to fast because of illness or old age, then he should pay fidya. And the fidya is around, probably this year, between 7 and 9 or 10 pounds for every day. Depends on his level of the food on a daily basis. So if his meal is about 10 pounds, then he pays 10 pounds. His meal is 20 pounds, he pays 20 pounds. Depends what he eats. This is the fidya he pays. So, but if he eats 20 pounds, he can't give 5 pounds. So, and regarding the zakah, it has nothing to do with the siyam. Zakah is zakatul fitr, probably you're asking about fitra. Fitra related to siyam, everyone who's fasting and who's not fasting. We pay fitra for all the family members, the young, the old, everyone. We pay fitra for them.
Okay, all right. I've got a few questions coming in on the live stream here. If I can, I'm going to actually sort of go to the people who've asked them and invite them to ask their questions sort of themselves. So first of all, I don't know their first name, but somebody called N Arwan. I'm just going to hopefully allow them to speak now. Yeah, Mr. or Ms. Arwan, if you can hear us there, you asked a question earlier. You'll need to unmute at your end. Okay, it looks like we're possibly having some technical issues there with that. So instead, I'll just read the question as it was asked. Humour is increasingly important for people's mental well-being during the difficult period and to keep spirits up, help isolated people, etc. Among Muslims, jokes and humour, especially during Ramadan, is frowned upon. What is the Islamic position on this? Sheikh Tamim.
It's frowned upon if it was outside the boundaries, of course. But if it's inside the boundaries, it's funny, and nothing wrong with that. And the Prophet ﷺ used to have some funny companions, and they keep, even some of them, they used to do pranks. And
during Ramadan?
Yeah, not during Ramadan, across the year, they are pranksters, some of them. So they used to do some pranks, and the Prophet ﷺ will stop them when it goes beyond the boundaries. As long as it's inside the boundaries, it's something funny and everyone can enjoy. But having said this, funny, it doesn't mean funny to you. Funny, it has to come with responsible funny if you want. But sometimes somebody wants to sit down and you took the chair, and then he sat on the floor and he broken his back. It's not funny. For you, it's, yeah, we had a laugh, but it's not funny, no. So it has to come with responsibility. Funny, it means you don't harm anyone. You don't step on anyone's honor. You don't promote lies. You don't do things which is mocking the Quran or the angels or the Akhirah or these kind of things. If you are inside the boundaries, then why not? Islam is not against having fun and joy in a permissible manner within the Islamic parameters.
Okay, just a follow-on question from that. Similarly, it's forbidden for Muslims to lose hope. So how can we use Ramadan to lift our collective spirits, maintain the sense of community, and being positively spiritual? Sheikh Tamim?
Losing hope is definitely haram. قل يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله. All my servants who went beyond the boundaries and committed many sins, do not lose hope in Allah's mercy. So Allah's mercy is very vast. So it's not allowed for the believer to lose hope in Allah's mercy. So the one who deprives himself from Allah's mercy, he will be deprived. So Allah Azza wa Jal is saying in the Hadith Qudsi, O son of Adam, even if your sins were to reach to the sky and you came to me, associate no one with me, and you were to ask me for forgiveness, I will forgive it for you, no matter what. To that extent, and I was once delivering this hadith in the city. We had some circles preparation for Ramadan last year or so in the city network. So one of the attendees, I was saying, of course Allah is saying here subhanahu wa ta'ala that even your sins were to reach to the sky, and probably no one has that much. And one of the attendees, he said, you never know, Sheikh. You never know.
Okay, and of course, I mean, this sort of links back to what you were talking about earlier, Hina, just in terms of like the importance of people sort of maintaining good spirits and maintaining sort of good mental well-being sort of during Ramadan. Is there anything that you sort of want to add there?
I think it's been covered quite comprehensively by Sheikh, but yes, we do know that the sense of hopelessness is something that that we are seeing, and it's really important for people to remember kind of the mercy of Allah and our kind of the wider purpose of why we're here, and just put everything into perspective. So it's a really key part of promoting mental well-being.
Okay, right. Next question from Asif Ghafoor. Hope, again, apologies if I'm mispronouncing. What is the best food to eat during sahur, which will give you energy throughout the day and stop you feeling tired? Hina.
That's a really good question. The sahur should be the most important meal because it's got to keep you going for the rest of the day. So what's recommended by dietitians is to make sure that you have kind of long-acting carbohydrates, so and whole grain foods. So things like porridge, for example, would be very good, and then try and make it so add other components of like fruits, and you can add some yogurt. So trying to make it balanced, so having your healthy proteins, your healthy fats. So some people put things like avocado as well. You can be really creative, but essentially you want to have your healthy carbohydrates, fats, proteins, a bit of fruit and vegetables. Try and get some fluid in there as well, so drinking water, but also if you have milk or yogurt, that's a fluid rich food, would be good to keep you going.
And
but try and avoid all of these fried things or fatty things. Like I know that there's a tendency for people to have those foods, but they cause a sugar rush and then a crash very quickly and make you feel tired.
Okay, and just a sort of supplementary question for that, and this applies sort of every year, but in terms of sort of balancing your food intake between suhoor and iftar, when should you be eating more, and which should be the bigger meal of the day?
That's a really difficult one. I think practically people struggle to eat kind of a balanced diet, a balanced meal at suhoor, because people are really tired and they just want to dance something really quickly. I would say that the suhoor is the most important meal, because you're going to be awake the rest of the day. That's the one that you need to keep you going and to keep you fueled. So that's the one that I would focus most on if you can, but practically I know that doesn't happen.
Okay. Next question. Is it a good idea to exercise while fasting? If so, how should one go about keeping fit? Hina.
Sure. So exercise, I know, is something that takes a huge backseat during Ramadan because the fasts are long, we're not drinking, and we're feeling tired. So the blanket advice is try and do whatever you can. So even if that means going out for a walk, getting some fresh air, going in your garden, the amount of exercise and when you do specific forms of exercise really depends on your underlying kind of fitness and stamina levels. So if you're somebody that already exercises every day and has a good cardiovascular fitness level, then you won't find it that difficult to fast even when to exercise even when you're fasting. And we know athletes who still continue to train during Ramadan because they have that baseline fitness. But if you're somebody that's kind of average or doesn't really do much exercise, then it might not be a good idea for you to do it while you're fasting, but maybe do it after iftar. You do need to allow at least 2 hours after you have broken your fast to do a bit of light exercise. But things like walking you could easily do even when you're fasting. There are some kind of high intensity videos as well out there. It only takes 10 minutes. You can do that after you break your fast if you're somebody that likes doing regular exercise.
Okay. I mean, this year, of course, the added dimension is that the governments have mandated that we're only supposed to go out sort of once a day for exercise. Depending upon people's circumstances, I'm guessing that people are more likely to be going out for a walk or a run sort of in daylight hours rather than in the dark. So obviously that's just something else to think about. But
yeah,
I mean, presumably almost everybody is able to go out and walk and get sort of fresh air and stretch the legs, even if we're not talking about sort of real kind of intense training.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about when I was talking about just going out for a walk during, obviously when you're walking in daylight hours and you're fasting, it will probably just be a light stroll, and that's okay as well. Just do as much as you can manage, and don't obviously try and push yourself.
Okay, great. Another question from Anis Mohammed. Does insulin injection invalidate the fast? I don't know which one of you to put that to. Sheikh, I'll let you answer first.
We have different opinions, but generally speaking, no. Injections will not break your fast unless it was nutritional injection, like supplement of food. Then yes, the opinion of some scholars, the majority probably, it breaks your fast. But if it wasn't, it's a normal injection, no, it doesn't break your fast. As well as donating blood doesn't break your fast, or having blood test doesn't break your fast. These kind of things doesn't break your fast, no.
Okay, and I'm going to have to sort of confess my absolute ignorance about this, because I mean I'm not diabetic and I don't have anybody diabetic or insulin dependent in my family. But Hina, does insulin sort of constitute nutrition? I'm not quite sure exactly. I mean I know it's involved in sort of breaking down and sort of regulating sugar.
I think my concern if somebody's insulin dependent diabetic is that they need to be eating regular amounts of carbohydrates during the day. They're at risk of lowering their blood sugar very quickly, or developing really high blood sugar levels. So for insulin dependent diabetics, again, this is something that if you are diabetic, you would have discussed with your diabetes nurse or doctor in advance, because that is a very personalized discussion. I would be concerned if somebody who is on insulin and is planning to fast has not spoken to their doctor or their nurse about it. And I know at the moment we are busy, but things like these are also really important, because the last thing we want is for people to end up in hospital with complications because they haven't sought medical advice.
Okay, great. I think that's probably all of the questions that we've got, which is good, because we're coming up now to the end of our time. So I'm going to see about wrapping things up there. Our thanks very much to everybody involved in sort of making tonight possible. Thank you to both our panelists, Sheikh and Hina.
The last question.
Sorry?
The frontliners, are they allowed to fast? This is going everywhere, viral, that you can't fast and you shouldn't fast. Those are doctors in the A&E and intensive care units. Are they allowed to fast or they shouldn't fast? This is the common question. I'll just quickly answer this. The simple answer, to be honest with you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered this question easily in the Quran. The verses which I recited already. Siyam is obligatory unless you are sick or you have a valid reason. So if they are not sick, although they have the PPE on them and it's not easy, may Allah bless them and energize them and protect them and help them and support them, but they shouldn't break their fast because they are working in intensive care unit and they have the PPE on them for long hours and long shifts and what have you. No. What the advice is, put it on, try. If you did find that I cannot focus, I'm losing focus and I will do a bad job, then that's it. You can break your fast. But without putting yourself in that experience, it's not allowed for you to break your fast. Even if you are working in ICT unit or even if you are working in the front lines and the nurses and what have you, you can't. If you are healthy, you are not ill, unless you have experienced the pressure and the amount and then I lost it, I can't do this, then you can break your fast. And it's not always the same. Some days you have very long shifts, some days you don't have very long shifts. I know now it's chaotic and it's not always the same, but again, I'm just giving just general guidelines. For those who are on the front line, don't listen to these circulating and viral opinions unless you are really experiencing difficulty. Don't break your fast.
Okay, and I've just got actually one question that's come to my mind. I was expecting somebody else to ask this, which is why I haven't asked it until now. But I think it's an important one, and I'll be interested to get to both your reactions to this. We were told yesterday, given an announcement that lockdown is going to continue for sort of at least 3 weeks. But we know that I mean the end of Ramadan, Eid is probably, don't have a calendar in front of me, but probably around about 5 weeks away, or thereabouts, sort of 4.5 weeks or so. Now that means circumstances could change, government health advice could change sort of during that time, or people may get the sense. I mean, we're getting numbers coming out from the government every day about sort of the number of new cases, infection, the number of new deaths, particularly as we come to the end of Ramadan. And that period is likely to coincide with the final 10 days, and not usually people would be sort of doing additional prayers and probably trying to go to mosque. Would you, I mean, irrespective of government advice, Sheikh, would you be saying that, okay, it's okay for people to sort of ease up a little bit on the restrictions in order to make the most of those last 10 nights? I'll ask you that first of all, Sheikh.
No, definitely. I'm very strict on this, to be honest with you. No, we are, one of the main aims of the Sharia is to preserve lives. So this is one of maqasid al-Sharia, protection of life, preservation of life. So anything which might risk human life and spread the virus is not allowed. You have to, it is an obligation to stick to these regulations and stay at home and don't go out. Unless there's a necessity, you don't go out.
Okay, and Hina, obviously, I mean, I recognise that you don't have sort of any advanced knowledge really about sort of what the government's going to be advising, but I mean, as a medical professional dealing with cases on the front line, and I mean, some of your patients must be particularly vulnerable. What would your answer to that question be if people are thinking about just sort of having a few get-togethers towards the end of Ramadan?
I think I've kind of mentioned this before as well, about the need to stick to staying in your own homes, as tempting as it might be. But you know, it's only when we all stay at home that we can actually then get over this pandemic. If everybody starts thinking, you know, what if we just pop over to our neighbors or just see our family relative down the road, it's going to be catastrophic. We're then going to see another wave. We're currently kind of seeing a plateau in the number of cases that are being admitted and the number that are dying, and we want to keep it that way. So as soon as people start relaxing and kind of taking shortcuts, that's when we're going to see another problem. So it's really important for people to stay at home, regardless of how tempting it may be.
Okay, and I mean, of course, the big day in, as I say, in whatever it is, about 4.5 weeks now, is going to be Eid, and usually people would go to mosque again for Eid prayers. Sheikh, I mean, assuming that the advice doesn't change, I mean, inshallah, maybe it will, but I think it's probably realistic that we're not going to see a complete easing up and sort of, and being allowed to do congregational prayers in the way that we usually would. How would people go about doing Eid prayers at home?
Let me tell you first, Eid prayer is not obligatory, by the way. It's a sunnah. It's an optional. In the Hanafi school, they have a different view. They consider it as a wajib, which is a level below the obligation. So we have the obligation, which is farad. The wajib is a level below, and then the sunnah. In the Shafi'i school and the rest, and the Hanbali school, they consider it as a sunnah. So I'm not saying it's something light not to do it, but if we can't do it, then we can't do it. That's it. And Allah Azza wa Jal will not overburden you with something which you can't do. And you will have the reward for that as long as you have the intention. And we're all longing for that. But if we can't do it, then that's it. We can't do it.
Okay, very, very wise advice there. Okay, and there I think we're going to have to leave it. Sorry, something's gone wrong. My camera's stopped working by the looks of it. But thank you very much. I hope you can both still hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you can at least hear me, even if it can't be seen. Thank you very much to both of our panelists, and indeed thank you very much to everybody else involved in organising and producing tonight's talk. Samira, the co-chair of City Circle, for managing social media tonight, and to the other volunteers who've helped pilot and test the systems that we're using this week. As I said at the start, this was always going to be sort of experimental for us. So if there were any shortcomings, if there are any areas for improvement, then firstly, please forgive us. But also, please let us know. We may attempt to run some additional pre-iftar talks during Ramadan. So if there's things that we could sharpen up on, or ideas for doing things differently, then please feed back to us, and hopefully we can take those things on board. For those of you who have found out about tonight sort of via friends or via social media, if you'd like to keep in touch with us here at City Circle, if you'd like to know what's coming up, if you just remember to go to our website at thecitycircle.com, you can put your email address in there, and you'll be signed up to our mailing list to hear about what's coming. And otherwise, I just want to say once again, thank you very much to everybody for coming and joining us tonight, for asking your questions. If there was anybody that I didn't come to, then apologies. But it looks like, I think there were a few people sort of asking the same questions. I think both of the panelists probably answered everything, sort of either directly or indirectly. So from all of us here at City Circle, we'd like to wish you all a very blessed, peaceful Ramadan. Stay safe, and I'm going to hand over to the Sheikh and ask him to close with a couple of du'as. So, assalamu alaikum.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم يا ربي يا رحمن يا بديع السماوات والأرض يا ذا الجلال والإكرام اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة في الدين والدنيا والآخرة يا أرحم الراحمين. Have mercy on us, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, lift this pandemic and this calamity from the Ummah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Cure our illnesses and help those who are ill and support them, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Arham al-Rahimeen, provide us with your provisions, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Make us grateful for your provisions, Ya Allah. Keep your provisions and your favors among all of us, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And make us more grateful to your favors, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Arham al-Rahimeen, Ya Allah. Enable us to be better Muslims this Ramadan, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Enable us to keep our patience, to improve it, and to improve our character and our conduct. Ya Allah, help us to be closer to you, Ya Allah, this Ramadan. Ya Arham al-Rahimeen, we are begging you, Ya Rabbal Alameen. We have no one to support us and help us. We trust no one but you, Ya Allah, to lift this calamity from our Ummah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Arham al-Rahimeen, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Accept our repentance. Accept our repentance, Ya Allah. Forgive our shortcomings, Ya Allah. Forgive our sins, Ya Allah. Improve our relationship with you, Ya Rabbal Alameen, and our relationship with our families, Ya Allah. Ya Arham al-Rahimeen, Ya Arham al-Rahimeen. Have mercy on us, Ya Allah. Have mercy on us, Ya Allah. Have mercy on us, Ya Allah. Enable us to recite your book and understand it and apply it, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ya Arham al-Rahimeen, Ya Arham al-Rahimeen, help us to get rid of the bad habits, Ya Rabbal Alameen, to develop and improve new habits, Ya Rabbal Alameen, in our life. Ya Arham al-Rahimeen, Ya Rabbal Alameen. We are asking you, Ya Allah, we are asking you, Ya Allah, you are our Lord, Ya Allah, you are our Lord, Ya Allah, you are our Lord, Ya Allah, to give us tranquility and peace in our hearts and our homes. Keep us safe and protected, Ya Rabbal Alameen, and our loved ones, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. صلي وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. آمين آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خيرا, all of you guys.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sheikh, and thank you very much, Hina, and thank you very much to everybody watching. Do have a wonderful Ramadan. Ramadan Kareem. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.